All right, welcome H Radio 22. Oh, hold on a second. Got something playing? Give me a second. Sorry, that's just you can't hear a video that I'm going to play you. I started playing without my consent. All right. Anyway, so welcome to lesson 26. We're going to talk about interviews, H Radio 123 part timers. Again, hope you're having a great week. And again, once again, I just mentioned that before in the previous lesson. Reach out and touch. I say, I've been listening to a bit of Depeche Mode, Marilyn Manson. I was going to say, reach out and touch faith. If you need any help, please make sure that you do use the WhatsApp line and DM me directly should you need any questions answered. And again, just in general, just a precursor once again to say that the last week, so not next week, week after, but it's going to be a full summative class, and again, revision, etc., etc., where you can please ask all your questions. But then also make sure that you have also started your S1 so that you can show me some of the work and we can kind of go through it, give you some feedback, whatever it is, and lead you in the right direction. Let's get into this particular lesson, which is all about interviewing and the process around interviews that you will conduct on your station or on your show with, I say, relevant to people, people of interest. And remember, at any one given point, I just want to start sharing the screen here. And I'm just going to do this because we are going to be looking at some videos as we normally do. Remember, at any one given point, you've got to be able to be creating or conducting an interview that is important and relevant to your listener. Once again, as you've been hearing me preach and preach and preach, all about the listener, all about the listener, and it's got to be contextually the correct. I mean, you have to construct it in the contextually correct manner, right? To be able to present it as something that they would be interested in or would they would benefit from. Just as a close up, before I get to this, this is the activity that is going to take you a little bit of time and reflection just to close off on that personality, which I didn't do in the previous lesson. I ended and I forgot about it. Just to be transparent, right? So let's just quickly, before we start lesson 26, look at this exercise. When I did say before in the previous lesson, I said take down a paper and start writing all these things that you know about yourself, and that was going to obviously be an assistant to help write a step forward in being able to answer these questions here. The first one is briefly describe your personality. In other words, answer the question any station manager is going to ask you, which is tell me about yourself, right? Telling me about yourself is, again, something that you have to selectively choose the response, and I'm saying the whatever is in the response, right? The content of that response to match the person that is asking you that question. So if you're on a blind date, it's going to be very different to, let's say, a station manager that is asking you the same question. Tell me about yourself. On a blind date, 10 to 1, or a first date, whatever it is, you're going to talk more about things that are personal to you, and you will tell them about what you do for a living, and this is where you stay, this is where you come from, like this is your ethnicity, or this is your beliefs, or whatever it may be, right? Well, whereas with the station manager, like you've got to make it a bit more, obviously it's corporate oriented, right? So yes, tell me about yourself, your passions, your strengths, your weaknesses. Tell me about your history, like your experience. What are your strengths in terms of skill sets? Again, what is it that makes you stand out? Tell me about moments that did, kind of define you as a human being. In terms of have you done anything great in the industry, in the platform that we are currently in? So in radio, we're talking about radio. What is your favorite show? What is your favorite podcast? Have you produced any podcast? That type of stuff. So you've got to again contextualize the correct things for the correct person at the correct time. Name 5 skills that you think you need to bring to the table as a professional broadcaster. Explain then why they are necessary in doing your job properly. So, for example, a hard skill is editing, right? So, sound editing is it's mandatory for all broadcasters. I still don't understand. I don't understand that if there's a broadcaster. that goes to air and doesn't know how to edit something. I'm saying like extract audio, record voxes, record an interview, cut that down, and make sure that it's a good product for on air. Doesn't make any sense, right? And I see it. I see it, and we all see it actually. If you paid some attention, right, and you know that this particular broadcaster doesn't have a producer set to the show, that will do it for them, right? Because that's their part of their job, right? They just don't post anything. I'm saying to you in terms of like post production, like a podcast that is obviously a just an edited version of something that we are repurposing from an interview that you did on air or a moment that you did on air, whatever it may be, right? You've got to do that yourself, as well as again that pre-production process. We're going to talk about just in a moment, just in terms of interviewing, right? Pre-production also involves sound editing and editing in general. So something that you would be posting to social media needs to be nicely edited. You got to obviously know how to use certain applications, software, apps, whatever it may be, right? But also, again, if you're going to be voxing somewhere at an event, then you got to get only the best pieces out. Like take snippets from let's say certain interviews that or certain sound bites that you find on YouTube, right? And cut them down to 15, 20 seconds or whatever it is to kind of introduce maybe your segment or to explain or help you your end of the conversation or your argument or whatever it may be, right? This is necessary. It is mandatory, right? And if you don't know how to do, for example, something like that, then I don't even know what to tell you. I'm saying to you as a manager, I don't know what to tell you, right? So go ahead and do those 5 skills and see what they can be. They are transferable skills. So if you have something that is a like a management skill, for example, like a time management skill, that is it's obviously exacerbated by your experience in, for example, like a management role position or being some kind of producer in television, which has to do a lot with time management or whatever, then you can say that like time management it's a again a transferable skill that I can use on in within obviously radio and broadcasting, right? Use your answer to question one, right? So this briefly describe your personality and apply the spin method to your personality and characterize yourself according to the methods and its core principles. So go and split the self, the personality aspect of it, the I, putting the I into whatever it is that you do. And again, natural, like what aspects of yourself are you going to explain, to convince yourself and everyone else that your approach to being a natural human being and a natural presenter is what you are. Okay, it's the closing activity there for 25. And we can start. Let me see here. Let's go first. Start the lesson 26. And then you'll see that we'll go back and forth. I particularly picked two interviewers, right? Interviewers. Um, there's one with did I take the Bob Mabena one? I just want to see Bob Mabena. Which one did I choose, man? Just give me a second, yeah. Uh, yeah, the Bob Mabena on with John Perlman, right, on Kaya. And the other one is Piers Morgan, who we know is super controversial. And again, let's just disclaimer that if he does swear, this is from Piers Morgan, uncensored, right? Chaos, 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 chaos. So we're going to look at two different types of approaches to interviews, right? And then we are going to obviously chat through the process of ourselves and what we can approach and how we can approach interviews, right? Subject code H Radio 123 part timers is what we're looking at. Cullinan and Nash's Next Level Radio, Chapter 4, interviews, page 156 to 159. Okay, so let's chat about interviews. You know that, I mean, again, as I said to you, like your approach to a good interview is yes, pre-preparation, again, great execution, etc., etc., and obviously relevance, etc. As I said and I mentioned before. But here we go. Like we need to also know that you are approaching it with perhaps maybe the policy that the radio station has obviously set out in their business policy, their corporate policy, whatever it may be, right? So, for example, you will be restricted in many different ways if you go and have a look at the policy, which anyway you sign and agree to in your contract and know of the brand, the mission, vision statement, etc., etc., etc. Right? You can also you will can construct and you can again kind of mold your interviews based on that kind of guidance as well. All right, examples. Like an interview should be considered a feature, right? It might be one of the policy examples, right? That are again according to your station and should have all the characteristics of a feature, a beginning, middle, and an end. This goes without saying, as well as a common thread throughout. All interviews must be target market related and must be passed by the program department, right? So that's not always necessary. I'm saying you won't find that a lot in stations, particularly because there are so many different shows and so many different interviews, and the programming department, in other words, your manager, your program manager, is not going to sit there and be like, yes, 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 no, 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 yes. Because the thing is, again, it's that control that they give to you. They say, listen, you have a bit of authority, you have some freedom, and just make sure that please do not go and, as RuPaul says, you know, something it up, right? So, what is necessary, or should I say, relevant to this particular point, is if you have a maybe a very taboo related, so very controversial interview that you want to host on your show, and you would need permission from your manager to allow that, and that isn't always right. So most radio stations would have a policy that all interviews need to be approved by the program department itself, right? And again, these are just examples. So here is, let's say, like an interview policy or guide. XFM targets its product and messaging delivery at its composite typical listener. Remember, we spoke about the typical listener many, 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 many yonks ago, right? So the composite is a hypothetical listener. Once again, if you can remember that we obviously we construct knowing everything about them, their lifestyle, anything about their lifestyle and who they are, and we will then go and construct. I'm saying how we run competitions or create competitions or content or the types of presenters we select or the shows that we construct or create whatever it may be around what it is that this particular listener would like, right, and fit them. So meet Joe. Joe is young, energetic, and passionate about South Africa and the world in which he lives. So already we know, let's just, because we're talking about interviewing, right? This person, like we should be looking at predominantly South African based core content and South African people that we chat to, South African, I'm saying issues and, again, persons or personalities of interest, right? So Joe is a huge fan of the world of popular music and entertainment or popular music entertainment. So now we already know, once again, like we should also go look at pop music artists that we could include as part of our interview strategy or interviewing policy or not policy, but our strategy. He is media and tech savvy, so already we also know and always on trend. So we can include tech content and media related in terms of like we know like this person is on social media, so we can also construct IG lives, TikTok lives, that type of stuff, where we can hold interviews in another space altogether. Joe understands his responsibilities as a young South African global citizen. So we can also talk and bring about, again, social consciousness right within the interviews that we do construct. Again, we apply this to all content just so that you know, again, as our disclaimer, but we are talking about interviews today. He lives boldly with his responsibilities. In other words, he's passionate about relationships, sex, friends, family, school, work, ultimately play. So all of those particular umbrella topics or areas of interest are ways that we know we can talk to people about relationships. We can talk to a sex expert, right? A friend, like friends and family. We can talk about psychologists, and we can talk to friends and family or interview them and see dynamics. Make sure that obviously. We are within, the core culture of values, that type of stuff, schoolwork, etc., and play. So events, concerts, recreational activities, fitness events, etc. Joe knows what he wants and knows what he has to create his or has to do to create his own future, right? Consciousness, right? So Joe loves XFM because XFM is a tribe. It's a group of people who talk to him, with him about him. Joe also uses XFM to be the first of his friends to be in the know on the latest relevant news and trends, and that is the who is who and the what is what. With XFM, Joe is encouraged to live boldly and to amplify lives. Great. So now that we understand this composite listener, we can now obviously construct the way that we approach, let's say, for example, interviews, right? Application, for example, we love, and I have played before for you snippets of Larry King. I think maybe I might have played the whole video just because I love Larry King, as I've said to you before. One of the greatest and best interviewers of all time, the late Larry King. So he really is, again, a king of conversation, right? And no pun intended. I just saw how that worked great. Your conversation or your questions should come from your guests' stories and not from your notes. So, listening actively to that particular interviewee that you are having, those guests and that conversation, you need to be an active listener, right? So, not the actual listener we're talking about, but who is, we've said in different context, active and passive. We're talking about you. You need to listen to the person because there is where the real meat and the conversation that you create is going to obviously come from. So obviously you do come prepared. I said that before. You've got to do the pre interview, which you'll see. There's a 6-step process that we're going to look at in this particular class, but okay, like you need to listen and be attentive and be present, right? XFM shows do many interviews on air. Many times these interviews are not properly researched, produced, and executed, and are usually very boring for the listener. So remember, XFM is just this hypothetical station that we're talking about. So these are the case. Guest A is available, and there are many followers on X. So let's get them to come in. That's not correct. Like if they've got a lot of followers, it's one thing, but are they right for your station and your audience is another thing. Are those followers from your station? I'm saying, are they in the same target audience? Does this guest have anything to do to provide someone with an enriching experience, right, by what they have to say? Then what we do is Google search about the guest and get some what we believe to be good questions, or we generate it on ChatGPT and just go there. We don't put any work or interest or investment into our pre-planning, which is not obviously the correct way to do a job properly, right? Guest A comes in, we ask them these questions. This at best becomes a very mediocre kind of blank vanilla. It comes in, comes out. No, really, no, it made no impact on anyone's life. Yours, the interviewee, and not the listener either. Right, so we should want to be excellent, not mediocre, to thrive for excellence and to complete, or so to say, compete the best interviewers in the world. Right, again, and again, be very judgmental when you crit yourself, man. Listen to yourself when you do interviews, record them, whatever it is. Go back, listen, and say, "Ooh, I used 40,000 more times, like just 70% more than I used actual words, and I'm speaking about myself, particularly in this last interview that I actually ran. I wasn't in terms of being present in execution. Failed. The interview was great, but it's very irritating to listen to. Right, so I would need to go and make sure once again throughout the week or every single day I need to practice on completely eradicating these ums and ums and ums and ums just from my common like everyday conversations so that when I go on air, when I switch on my presenter personality, it can actually have nothing that's holding this interview back from potentially being a great product at the end of the day. Our competition is not only other FM radio stations, but also YouTube, Instagram, and all other channels that our listeners go to for the content that they want to hear or see or consume. So the six phase approach to interview prep will look at the magic that happens actually in phase 1 to 4, right? And you'll see why in a moment that is important. And then we'll look obviously at 5 and 6. The first phase is the quality test, right? Be selective, obviously, of the guest that your show is going to book. So make sure that it is the first choice that you would want for a particular content piece that you're trying to, again, amplify, spotlight, whatever it may be. It should be the correct guest, not the second, third, fourth, fifth, 17th choice just because they're available and you didn't put enough of an effort to actually get the correct person, right? Also, here's another thing. It could be the correct person, but they might not be, oh, what can I say? Yeah, great to listen to. They might be very boring and very kind of monotone. And so you might have to genuinely rethink about how you're going to include them, potentially either maybe pre-record if this person is necessary, right? Like as a first choice for the interview. Alternatively, you can always go find someone else, right? And so you are going to say, let me do a bit of a quality assessment on who it is that I want. Are they available? And you'll see in a moment how we're going to be able to probably assess that for ourselves, right? So, ask the following 4 questions. Note that you should answer yes to at least 2 of these 4 that are coming, right? So, are there a big star with a company like Universal Studios or high target appeal? Can they tell great stories, right? Very important. Great storytelling is making great radio, right? Does one of the show players have a high interest in the guest? And will this create great entertainment? So it's one of your, let's say, like you are, this person is not an idol, but you're a super big fan of them, and you know a lot about them, and you know that obviously they match the target audience, etc., whatever it may be, right? Are they a great interview, even if they are not a huge name? Remember, it's not about the name, it's about the person, about the context, and the relevance of the story that you're trying to tell. So, again, a great interview from big to small person, I'm saying, in terms of, again, that ranking of importance, which is, I'm doing these bunny quotes, these quotes here, because that is really good. That's circumstantial and it's debatable, right? But you have to ask yourself, like, is this person a great guest? Okay. Will they set up one of the players on the show in some way, right? So one of the players, meaning in other words, someone that is part of the show. And again, do they contribute to that construct that you are trying to achieve? Right. What's going on here? There we go. Pre-production. So when you do decide on this person, you do contact them, whatever it is, you have to talk to them beforehand. So again, you've targeted a particular musician, maybe you've spoken to their agent, and now you've got their contact number. You set up a time before your show, obviously, to chat to them, right? So spend at least 60 minutes longer prepping for the interview, right? Okay. Wait, hold on a second. There's a pre-interview. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So this is you doing, let's say, a bit of your research, knowing that you're reading different interviews, you're listening to different interviews that these people have done, or this person has done, or certain statements that they've had in obviously media, etc., whatever. So you're really putting in your study about this person to get a really good knowledge about how well you know them, right? Okay. So read biographies, get up to date on the person's career. So let's say if they're an actor or an actress, like movies that they've acted in, where did they start out? Like, what is their latest release? Were they nominated for something? Have they started a particular like particularly being a motivational speaker, or they in a scandal, whatever it may be, whatever it is, right? Maybe they wrote their own book, like we say, will in which they feature all the books that they have written, etc. Right? When you do have, let's say, an author, best you also do read a little bit of like of the book itself and bookmark certain places that are great conversation or topic, conversation starters. So develop the first set of questions, right? So one, two, three, four, five, six, finished, right? From start to finish, that have good good direction in terms of you will have a baseline of questions, and you'll see now in just a moment why it's important, right? Because you're developing one, the arc, the importance of why this particular guest is being interviewed by you at this particular moment on the station for the listener, right? It can be a person that's had many different great things, or I say conversation starters throughout their career, but of no value or importance at this particular moment, because maybe at this point, maybe they just had a baby, or they got married, or they won a Grammy, or they whatever it is, and that's what you actually have them in here for. So you would construct your line of questioning and your direction, etc., around that particularly, right? This could be a fun element, or that no other interviews would do. For example, a fun activity such as a game. So a touch point is something like, again, like a like name association or word association, or I heard that this was a quote describing you. Can you guess who said this about you? And let's play the quote out, or let's play the soundbite out. And they can say, "Oh, I know exactly who that was. That was my grandmother, and she said this and this, or this is my frenemy, or whatever it is in the industry, whoever, I don't know." So you put a bit of a like, don't be so serious. Why so serious, as the Joker says there. All right. Here we go into phase three. Conduct a pre-interview interview. Very important to start. You've got to build a relationship with this person as you would do with a listener, right? So what you do is you phone them beforehand, like I say, maybe 10 minutes, just chat to them, really get to know them, ask them a couple of questions about like things that you need some clarity on, like is this where you're from, or I don't see like anything about your family, or I don't see anything about someone mentioned that you were an architect, or you're qualified as an architect. Is this true? Tell me, like, do you still do that type of stuff? So I can also know how to reconstruct my initial prep, so that I can reconstruct it and polish it up to a better direction, right? And also, you want to create conversation. So you want, again, that kind of relationship that you are building with this person. Are they, again, this is where you find out, are they great speakers? Can they carry conversation? Do they also know the answers to certain questions? And if they don't, maybe you shouldn't ask that question. Maybe you should be asking other questions around that, right? Um, so that they are also, again, they have like a also they pre-prepped for themselves, knowing what's going to come along. I always send them the prep that and the questions that I'm going to ask them, and I say to them, this is a so it's an exoskeleton of what we will be asking you. Please, obviously, don't prep like word for word for this. Just be prepared for certain questions, to have certain answers, and know that I am, and we are going to be talking about other things that also do come up depending on what your responses are, or what we find is important, to carry a conversation with great fluidity, right, from one point to another point, right? Anyway, so again, it's a foreign concept for South African radio professionals. I don't know why. I particularly, I don't know of any particular person who wouldn't do a pre-interview, but it's very irresponsible, because then I have no idea what they sound like. I don't know what they know, and I have no connection. Already three big reasons why you should actually do the pre-interview, right? So this should happen telephonically at least 24 hours before the interview, and it can be done by the producer, or it can be done by the obviously actual presenter. Ask the phase two questions that you have built here, again, for clarity and direction. And ask the guests how they feel about the story arc. So, for example, I'm going to play this game with you. I'm going to ask you, could you give me your mom's number? Can you give me, I don't know, the principal of the school that you went to, and like when you were, obviously a kid, whatever it may be, or whatever it is. I'm going to like I just need your wife's number or your girlfriend's number. I just need some things that she's some information from her that I can't tell you. It's going to be a surprise, whatever it is. I don't know, right? So we'll find out those particular touch points that we want to obviously execute within the interview itself, and then we need some help here. We need some help. So ask for it. Keep notes of what questions have the potential for great answers, so that we can bounce off, right? And take out questions that are going to be stuff that people already know, unless they are a basis for context, right? That's very important. You can't just assume, even if this person has been interviewed by a million people, that right now you're just going to talk to Harry. Now, Harry who? But now Harry what? And now Harry when? We don't know these things. So make sure that you do obviously introduce the guest properly, contextualize the person correctly as well. But also there might be things that we have to know, like again, um, something very basic of let's say it's a book release. Why did you? Why do why did you decide at this very moment that this was important for you to write this book with this particular message? You understand? It's a generic question, but it is necessary for me to continue with actual deeper questions. You said in the book, yeah, this and this and this, which doesn't seem to me, because it was like that happened maybe 6, 7 years ago, and you spoke of immediacy in my first question, like just now, you just spoke about immediacy, and that I mean, you had to do it right now, which was very, I don't know, very awkward, and perhaps maybe read by the public as bad timing, whatever it may be, right? You want to be able to, again, create good context. And here's the game plan. So, phase four, we develop a game plan. Lane explains that the presenter should know now go back, sorry, to the drawing board. In other words, your prep, right, and then go and polish that up. So make sure that you have at least three great stories that you want to get the guest to tell, and develop a plan on how the conversation is going to run. Plan the open-ended questions. Don't do close-ended, the yes, no, have you not, you know, close and open-ended questions allow for the liberty of conversation, which is what you want, right? And again, for rich, like the possibility of rich potential responses. Okay. On the day, so this is why we say the magic happens here, 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 and here, because without this, number 5 and 6 are going to be garbage. Do you understand? So when you do get to the actual interview, like just when they do arrive, make sure you just step out of the studio. You go greet them, thank them. You tell them, listen, do you want some coffee? Do you want some water? Whatever it is. If you have snacks or whatever it is, and give it to them and say, oh, you're free to do this. If they do smoke, there's a smoking area, whatever it may be. And I'm going to be with you. Like I'm going to come back and bring you into studio in about 20 minutes time. Always tell your guests to please be there half an hour before, because then if they are running in traffic or there's problems or whatever it is, like you don't want to throw out and tease towards like an interview that might not actually happen. Do you understand? So please tell them to be there half an hour beforehand, and they'll arrive there, which is when you greet and you meet them, right? Okay. So merchandise, if there's any merchandise that, let's say, the station does have, give it to them. Why not? I mean, just give them, and it's not you spending money, it's the station, right? And they'll take it, even if they're going to use it as like something that they're going to, I don't know, clothe their dog. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? We want to be able to live, give, and provide the brand, right? Extend the brand. By focusing on their human side in this manner, you will make them feel more comfortable and will, as a consequence, achieve a greater interview while they are there on air, right? So, again, build a rapport beforehand, hand. Let's go to number six. Finally, obviously, execute. All this work has been put in, and now is the time for you to do a great job. All right. First of all, entertain. Second of all, sell. So, in other words, like you need to be able to make sure that this piece that you're doing, this interview, is a great piece to listen to, right? As a holistic product, and sell second. So, for example, we know that a lot of guests and a lot of people that are going to come in are going to want to push their albums, going to push their books, they're going to push their companies, they're going to push this, whatever it is. That is allowed, but at the end, right? Because this is not a free for all advertising platform. Like if you want to advertise, you got to pay. So make sure that when you do construct like your approach to questioning and you tell this guest beforehand, you may not please unashamedly go and advertise your, like I say, your product, your service, whatever it is. We will give you the time, and we're already giving you the platform to create awareness around like you as the person, right? Or the service or the product, whatever it may be, and as a byproduct, people will go and let's say if they want to buy your music or download your book or whatever it may be, right? Make it very clear to their PR agent, the handlers, whatever it is, that the show is going to promote the guest's product, right? But that it's only like in a very small and a by the way context. Surprise your guests, right? So do something that will be pleasantly received by your guests themselves, right? And then avoid questions that already provide the answer, right? So guests will not know how to answer such questions because the question is an answer and it's a statement more than anything else. Avoid yes or no questions. So ask open-ended questions, and I've explained why before. Ask sensitive questions later on in the interview. So let's say the interview is going to last in total, I'm saying over music, whatever it is, 20, 25 minutes, right? And each link is about 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes long. Make sure that we can get into deeper, more personal questions, maybe in the second link, maybe in the third link, to understand, because need to build that very ease into what they are like. I'm saying that particular interviewee is comfortable with opening up to you and opening up to the listener themselves, right? Using question clusters. So these can be effective devices, an effective device to help you delve deeper into someone's personality. So a series of questions on one topic are best asked one at a time so the guest is not overwhelmed. In other words, let's say you're going to tell them, I want to really focus on your current reaction to in obviously that we saw publicly, like on TikTok or Instagram, um, and it was your reaction to how I'm going to think of the MT thing just because like how you were treated at the Mike's Kitchen. First question is why did you speak so candidly and immediately on social media? You immediately did that without thinking. Do you think that that was like like the correct thing to do? Because you guys obviously deleted what you didn't, right? But you saw the responses first. Why was that? Answers the question then. Second question in the same breath there, I would say, do you feel of that? Because that first post alone, never mind the ones that came on afterwards, right? Have you lost a lot of followers? Like, and do you understand why it is that people just are not interested in you anymore? You know, and so it's cluster questions. It's still about the same thing, but one thing at a time. Don't ask a who, what, when, where all at once, because the person's not going to know which part of that they're going to give you, and so they're going to give you one long answer. That's unnecessary. Right. Okay. Let's finish this up. So often guests are not available for pre-interview interviews, and in such cases, it would be wise to invite these guests after your show and pre-record the interview, right? So, so pre-recording. allows you to talk a lot about a lot of stuff and then edit out only the great stuff there. And again, once again, for people that are traveling quite a lot, I'm saying the guests could be traveling a lot. If it's telephonically, we have a worry about like the quality of that call because there might be in certain areas um, uh, like, do they answer it? Are they going to answer it? They must answer it. They can't be driving. They can't be in loud spaces. As I'm repeating myself, I understand that. Or they might be overseas, right? And international calls might doesn't make sense, but any one given call, depending on which medium you're using. So you could be WhatsApp calling them, or you could be using like a system, like a callback system that the station has actually to record to your PC, etc. Could be everything's fine, but on the other side, I mean, reception is always the thing. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, right? And it could be a service provider thing as well. Doesn't matter. Pre-recorded, please. Because you're going to cut out and edit a lot of the garbage that is there. Right. Think about your target market, excuse me, here. So XFM's primary target market is 16 to 24-year-olds, LSM 7 to 10, urban South Africans who are trendy, progressive, and aspirational, which means the following. One, all the interviews and topics should be reflecting a strategic objective that serves to increase the percentage of LSMs or SEMs in our case, right? 7 to 10, right? Okay. With regards to social responsibility, like again, because remember Joe, kind of think about Joe, it should be across the board topics with slants towards portfolios of HIV, AIDS, health awareness, that type of stuff, mandates, rights, legislation, etc., for children, and so on and so forth. Those are just examples, right? Interviews are related to entertainment, music, sports, current affairs, but strictly reflect the interests of the target market. So get the right sports celebrity, get the right, let's say a political analyst, get the right musician, get the right actor, actress, get the right person in there that these people in your audience, your listeners, are interested in. Right. Okay. So when let's look at the interviews, right? And I would like you to prepare because I have definitely gone through that briefing, not that briefing, that snap example exercise I've done for the HBARs, but I definitely have gone through the interviews and the examples there. And what I will do is what I want to do is I'll just quickly create a separate document and I'll share that, make sure that it's shared along with this so that you can go and develop base interview questions around something. Say base interview, use a six phase approach, right? And preparation and how you would do something with some cool. All right, let's go and look at different interviews. Let's quickly look at Piers Morgan uh, and see what he's got to say.
They will never, ever condemn that massacre. How dare they even speak?
You don't give a damn what Hamas did to those innocent Israelis.
A lot of what we heard are lies.
President Biden has now come out and said that he's not going to allow a large number of American weaponry to be used.
If America doesn't want to help us, shame on them.
You know, it's very easy to understand why people like him have such an implacable desire to eliminate Hamas, isn't it?
They're not oppressed people. We're talking about billionaires.
You talked earlier that October the 7th was entirely justified because it's oppressed people. And as
I didn't say that. You are putting words in my mouth.
Where do the Hamas billionaires live?
I don't know if there's a Hamas billionaire.
All I'm actually doing is asking you very simple questions, and your failure to answer them is very illuminating.
Ah, is that you? Anyway, I'm just like, look at that. Why just go? I'm gonna tell me even subscribe. Oh, but in the wrong account. It doesn't matter. I'll subscribe anyway. Okay.
Heavy shelling has been reported in Hamas.
I just want to get to no. You know what?
In Gaza.
Let me keep quiet. Let's do it from the beginning a little bit. Sorry for cutting it off. There is obviously just a lag. Sorry
Commentator
about this.
Rania Khalek, Israeli-American commentator Emily Schrader, and British-Iranian lawyer Elika Lebon. Well, welcome to all three of you. Let me start with you, Emily, if I may. Significant intervention by the President of the United States, who says America will not be supplying Israel with a lot of the heavy weaponry that they would normally do because they don't think they should be going into Rafah in the way that Prime Minister Netanyahu says he's going to do.
Well, I think that the decision by President Biden is extremely problematic, of course, not just for Israel, but for the United States as well. I mean, to be cutting off Israel, who is battling against Hamas, not the Palestinian people, at a time when Hamas, which with the backing of the Islamic Republic of Iran, is carrying out senseless terrorism against innocent Israeli civilians and is still holding hostage American citizens, multiple American citizens. He's not deterring anyone, and he's not really saving any lives in Gaza either. If the United States really wants to see an end to this conflict, then there needs to be much more international pressure on Hamas to agree to a deal, which Israel put on the table, and to dismantle and disband Hamas from being able to control the Gaza Strip, because that's the only way that the Israeli society is going to see security and an ensurement that we won't see a repeat of October 7th, which Hamas has stated repeatedly that they will do again and again and again.
Okay, Rania Khalek, you've been at some of the protest encampments that we've been seeing in America, obviously in recent weeks. But what do you think of the situation now, which feels like whatever happens, we're heading to the end game here with this war on Hamas? Israel say, we're going to finish the job, we're going to take out every last remaining Hamas terrorist. But of course, many people have a deep concern that if they do this in Rafah, which is a massive refugee camp at the moment, then many thousands of civilians more are going to get killed.
Well, it appears you're right about that. I mean, this is 7 months of genocide we've been witnessing that continues to unfold. And what's happening right now is Israel has destroyed most of Gaza. They forced 1.3 million people into Rafah, where they told them to shelter. It's supposed to be a safe zone, but they've been bombing it and killing people there anyway. And if we look at what else they've done to the rest of Gaza, they've completely blown up entire apartment blocks. They've dismantled every single hospital in Gaza, including at two of them, El Shifa and Al Nasser Hospital, where they summarily executed hundreds of people, including doctors and patients, and threw them into mass graves. They've destroyed every university in Gaza. 600,000 of the 1.3 million Palestinians sheltering in Rafah right now are children, who, by the way, every single day are dealing with starvation because Israel has put them under a complete siege. It's completely outrageous that 7 months into this, we are still even having a debate about whether this is okay to be doing. This is a genocide being carried out against a defenseless population. And if Israel's allowed to continue into Rafah, we're going to see a bigger bloodbath than we already have.
Well, we're certainly going to see a lot more bloodshed. There's no question of that. On the question of genocide, what Israel say and what their supporters say, and what I'm sure Emily would say, is if Israel was genuinely perpetrating genocide, it has the tools to kill every single person in Gaza, and it hasn't done that, has no intention of doing that. However, if you want to talk about genocidal intent, Hamas has made it crystal clear that they do want the elimination of Israel. And in fact, after October the 7th, the official spokesman came out and said, we want to do it again and again and again. So there is clear genocidal intent from Hamas, isn't there?
Well, Piers, I have a list here of all of the genocidal statements by high-level Israeli officials that the South Africans did a very good job of presenting a case about at the ICJ.
Yeah, but they didn't actually conclude. But hang on, they didn't actually conclude it was genocide yet. So my question to you is not actually about that. It's whether you believe that Hamas has genocidal intent, which they began on October the 7th in that horrendous manner, and which they have repeatedly said they wish to continue. Do you accept that is genocidal intent?
I just don't accept the premise. Israel is a settler colony that is committed to stealing as much land as possible with as few Palestinians on it as possible. Israeli
Yeah, but that
leaders
wasn't.
have
Hang
always
on.
said
Again,
that.
I don't want to push on it.
Carrying out right now. Well,
I'm
let me finish.
not going to ask you again. I just wonder.
You
hang on.
I just want to finish.
I understand, but you were the one that mentioned genocide repeatedly. So I'm just simply asking whether you think that Hamas, with its behaviour and with its stated, you do not think they are genocidal towards Israel.
No, but am I allowed to actually answer? Or are you going to stop me from answering?
Well, you just answered. You said no.
What you're saying is essentially saying, well, am I allowed to say any more? Or I just get to say no and that's it? Because what you're talking about here is a group of colonized people. Well, these are a group of colonized people who are fighting against a settler colonial entity that seeks to eliminate them. I'm not going to sit here and call Hamas genocidal, just like I wouldn't call a slave revolt in the U.S. against plantation owners genocidal, just like I wouldn't call Algerians fighting their French colonizers genocidal.
I hear you. Before I go to Elika, though, just one final question for you.
Ironic.
Okay, so would you? This is a question I've asked many people for many months. Would you then condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th or not?
I don't condemn Palestinian armed resistance groups, just like I wouldn't condemn slaves shooting at their plantation masters. Apparently, a lot of you would. I wouldn't condemn Nat Turner's rebellion. I wouldn't condemn Geronimo. I wouldn't condemn the Irish fighting the British.
I have to tell you, Rania, that is why I ask everyone that question. Because sometimes people just say...
But here's, it's a distraction.
No, hang on.
It's a distraction.
Hang on. And people like you just brazenly say, no, I don't condemn a mass terrorist attack and the slaughter of 1,200 people. Fine.
No, I don't condemn
You've made your position clear.
It's
fine, I get it.
Fighting their occupiers
get it, but that's
and
why
colonizers. No, you're changing the wording and you're
hang on, everybody.
I was raping innocent civilians.
Sorry. It's so entertaining. Listen, please do not talk over your guest. This is obviously Piers's approach, and this is his thing, and they know that as well. I'm saying the guest always does. This is always chaos, right? But he is very, very good. Hence why he's Piers Morgan, and hence why he's so incredibly popular. Let's listen to a little bit more, and then I want to go local.
Hang on, Emily, I can do this.
How is that resistance?
I'm simply saying, Rania, when I get told I should stop asking that question, that is why I ask it, because the answers can be very eliminating.
Let me bring in Elika
Lebon. Let me bring in Elika. It's been waiting patiently. Elika, look, I have said from the start of this whole thing that it's horrendously complicated. And that's before you even get into the history of the conflict leading up to October the 7th. So I make no bones about it. This is to Elika Lebon. I make no bones about how complex this is, how difficult it is. And I'm under no illusion this all gets fixed quickly afterwards. It won't be. It's horrendous. What is your assessment of where we are here, though?
Well, look, we're talking about these are false equivalencies. These are comparisons that cannot be made because we're talking about slaughter of a civilian population. You cannot compare it to a slave uprising against slave masters because you're talking about people that are culpable in that instance, right? You can't say women and children are culpable for that. There's never been a time where that has been justified in history, where, you know, anybody goes and takes and murders children, babies, civilians. By that logic, therefore, all of us, right, are vulnerable to the same type of attacks. We are on native land. Why shouldn't we as civilians all then be slaughtered, raped and murdered because we are part of this colonizing entity, right? So there has to be a distinction that is made between, as they say, the state apparatus versus civilian life. And I think my assessment of this whole thing, which I think becomes so frustrating over time, is that there isn't this mutual blame or mutual responsibility being placed, right? We see these operations, what's happening in Rafah, but there's never this kind of like, you know, Hamas is doing this, like Hamas is keeping the hostages, Hamas is holding these citizens hostage essentially. Why doesn't Hamas let them out? There's many ways that we can avoid this bloodshed. It is Hamas that is choosing to continue this. Now, I'm not saying that this isn't, you know, there's only blame to be placed on one side. I think what's frustrating is that why is there this general perception that there should be no blame for the people that not only started this, but are choosing to perpetuate this every single day. There has to be some mutual responsibility to be fair, to be honest, to be balanced.
And Elika, listen, Elika, I completely agree with you. But on that point, then, where do you criticize Israel for their execution of their response to what happened?
What do you mean by that?
Well, do you say it's got to be fair on both sides, and I agree with you, and I've been critical of both sides in different ways. What is your criticism of the way Israel's executed this war? Because it's become, as you know, hugely contentious around the world. I don't think that Israel is blameless here either.
Absolutely. No, there's definitely many of its policies that are going to probably be assessed in a court of law. I'm sure that there are war crimes that have been committed. I can't really speak to that without having the evidence in front of us. Although, like I say, that's going to obviously be investigated. I think at the end of the day, when you talk about Nazi Germany, for example, okay, there was so many deaths involved in that. 75 million people were killed in World War II, and more than, I think, like 11 million just regular civilians. There's never this thing of like, the Allied forces were, doing something horrible or bad. There was this understanding that this is all because of the Nazis, and that we just don't have this kind of perception of what's happening right now. We don't have this perception of who is at the root of this and what is the cause of this.
But does Israel?
So that's not to say that everything that the Allied forces would have done would have been completely right or just.
Okay,
and that is an analysis that has to happen. But we have to stick to what is at the root of this.
Okay, Emily, Hrad, let me bring you back in. The problem for Israel is that the public concern and anger, obviously, is growing about this. And there's a particular concern and anger growing about Rafah, because it has got 1.4 million people there, many of whom are women and children. There's simply no way to go in and get 4 more battalions of Hamas terrorists without killing a lot more civilians. And obviously the civilian death toll so far completely dwarfs the death toll on October the 7th. At what point does Israel maintain the moral high ground to be doing what it's doing, given the mass devastation on civilian life, and in particular women and children?
I mean, I think that when it comes to casualty count, that's not an accurate basis to determine the morality of an issue. It's one factor of many, but the total casualty count isn't what makes something just or unjust on either side, quite frankly. That being said, obviously, Rafah is a very complicated operation. There are a lot of civilians there. That is why Israel has worked on developing plans. It is why they issued evacuation notices to over 100,000 Palestinians. Now, unfortunately, we're dealing with terrorist groups, terrorist organizations, including a lot of senior leadership that the IDF knows is in Rafah. We have intelligence that there were or are hostages inside of Rafah. That is why Israel needs to operate. And I want to ask a question, actually, myself, which is, given the fact that Israel has proposed multiple ceasefire offers, Israel has compromised even when Hamas changed the goalposts. That's according to U.S. officials, not Israeli. Even after that, Israel was willing to agree to a ceasefire deal. We were willing to agree to less hostages than were initially proposed, than we initially asked for, in multiple versions that have gone back and forth between Hamas and the negotiation teams and Israel. Then they changed the goalposts. Then they're talking about releasing 33 hostages. Israel said, okay, we'll do it. After that, Hamas said no. Same day, they do a PR stunt and release a statement that they actually approved a ceasefire offer that no one else had seen. This is malicious propaganda. This is exactly the type of tactics that we're seeing from this terrorist organization from day one. It's dishonest, and it puts Palestinian civilians in danger. And what we've seen on the ground in the past few days also supports that argument. We've seen Hamas fire from humanitarian zones. We've seen them fire rockets at their own humanitarian crossing. And something very important to remember, that the U.S. is talking a tough game right now towards Israel, but the U.S. has been developing a port off of the Gaza coast in order to provide aid to the Palestinians, and Hamas fired rockets at their own humanitarian port that the U.S. is building. This happened in recent days. So we are talking about an organization that actively wants more Palestinian civilians to die, whereas Israel is doing all they can to target only the terrorists. Yes, wars have consequences, and there are there is going to be bloodshed in Rafah, but we have no other alternative. If Hamas won't agree to a ceasefire offer that we are proposing, that we are still willing to negotiate. We sent a team to Cairo. It was Hamas who left the negotiations. If they won't release our hostages, we as a country have to do everything in our power to be able to release them. That's our last hope. We can't sit on our hands and do nothing. They still have over 100 hostages being held in the Gaza Strip.
All right. Good one. Interesting. Let's go back and finish that. Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. So sensationalistic. We know that. I want you to have a look at our own local backyard. With a little bit from Bob Mawena on the John Perlman Show.
Very good evening to Mkai. It's 5 minutes past 6. For the next hour, I get to do something that really is one of my favorite things. You spend an hour with somebody you think you know. My guest is someone I ought to know well. My guest is someone you ought to know very well. After all, Bob Mabena has been waking us up in the mornings for years and years and years. We're at opposite ends of the day on Kai FM, but I'm delighted to say to Bob, welcome to your own home. Bob Mabena, thanks. Good to have you with us.
Sean. It's a pleasure to be here.
Bob is marking 25 years of radio in his 26th year in radio. I'm not going to try and explain that. I'm sure someone can explain it a lot better than me. But, Bob, I suppose the first question, what's your memory of that very first time, not perhaps when you were on radio because we all called in and, you know, acted as reporters and so on, but when it was just you, in charge and in control?
It was when I cost Radio Bob 40,000 Rand.
On day one?
On day one.
I get it out the way early.
On day one.
There's a story there, tell it.
It's pretty much like the log you see that we have. That's one thing that hasn't changed, funnily enough.
Yes.
And I was so excited, you know, and so nervous that I forgot to flip the page.
Right.
That's why I picked all the airs I played in the first hour, and the second and third hour I forgot to flip the page. I just played stuff, music, and called my grandmother days on end, and a girlfriend that I had at the time, and that was it. I forgot to flip, and I cost the station that kind of money. I'll never forget that.
And what did they say to you? The edited version. This is a family show, so just give us the high points.
Do it again, and you're fired.
Okay, well that's pretty much to the point. But they didn't say, okay, 1,000 Rand a month, you can pay it off over 3 years and 4 months.
No, not at all. You know, at the time, Radio Bob was giving Metro a run for its money.
Yes.
Know? And a lot of people may not even remember that Radio Bob was actually licensed in Bophuthatswana.
Yes.
And, you know, there was a spillover. That wasn't the plan for Radio Bob to broadcast in South Africa and Swaziland.
Bob, how did you get into it? I mean, was it an audition? Was it knocking at the door? Was it making yourself indispensable or maybe a nuisance? How did it start?
Someone else became a nuisance and I was given the gig.
Okay.
There was an afternoon drive jock who had the green kind of habit that you inhale.
Yes.
And he had a physical fight with the station manager, Tapelo Tipe, at the time.
Okay.
And I had been hanging around, you know, pushing myself into interviews and that kind of stuff. And Abnambaditse was like, who was a program manager at the time, there's a guy that, you know, there's potential there. We need someone completely new. So we need to audition this guy and get him in there. And you know, there was this other guy who just actually called me a few minutes ago, Brother ED, who didn't like the young guys.
Right.
And he thought, let's give him Sunny Stitt, Johnny Coltrane and all that to audition with.
Yes.
Unfortunately for him, that was my kind of music. So I aced it and I got the gig.
You quoted as saying the only way that they'll get you off air is if someone suspends you or makes it impossible for you to come back. But I mean, are there ever mornings, because I did 9 years early morning, where I just thought, what am I doing at 4 a.m. when I really should be asleep? Never occurs to you to say, okay, you know what, let's do something else?
Yeah, this week more specifically.
Okay.
This has been a very, very tough week. I just got married.
Oh, congratulations.
The whole ceremony
Great,
and all that. So this week has been really tough. I couldn't breathe. My wife was surprised because this has never happened to me, that I actually don't snooze the alarm. I actually switch it off.
Yes.
I switched it off on Wednesday. And the sun woke me up.
Okay, well, it's good this didn't happen in the middle of July. Bob, I mean, radio's changed, and you've spoken at length on different platforms to say everybody predicts radio, time's up, TV's gonna ace you, the internet's gonna nail you. All these things are gonna come along and shift radio, and it just doesn't get shifted. Do you know why?
Well, it's because of its ability to be an amoeba.
Yes.
It takes the shape of whatever's new.
Yes.
And that's been the thing, really. I remember we used to have there's a cousin of mine that we work with. We used to have a Philips TV on top of the fridge, and you could get audio channels there. And Radio 2000 used to broadcast simulcast. And radio has always managed to cover itself around whatever new innovation there is. It's as simple as that, really. The internet, radio is there on the internet.
Yes.
Twitter, Facebook, and whatever else is new that's going to come. I mean, iPhone right now, Apple is trying to get people to develop their own radio station with their own playlist. If that voice of that someone who does it so well and makes you feel at home and a friend and one-on-one is not there, it's just music.
Bob, you've never just done radio. There's always been other stuff going on.
Yes.
Why has that been so important to you? You've been involved with foundations. You've never been afraid to stick your head up and comment on the social and sometimes political issues of the day. Why was radio never quite enough for just that?
It's because of basically the same question that you asked me before. Radio's ability to morph itself into whatever's going on. I mean, I remember the first offbeat thing that I did when I was at Radio Bob, when I was asked to present a music video request show. That followed me to the SABC. I did the the Toyota Chicken Lickin' Winner Car competition, which ran for 2 seasons, which was strange at that time.
Yeah.
And when Hrad was approached by Nissan to suggest someone, a popular DJ on the station who could race cars, he just looked at the traffic fines.
How did he know about your fines? Were you sending them to him?
Because sometimes I would actually drive company cars.
Okay, all right. So he was getting them anyway.
He was getting the tickets, and I enjoyed that. A season and a half, I totaled a car, went off a bend that they'd renamed after me within the racing fraternity, from Potter's Pass to Bob's Pass in East London, at about 210 kilometers on a hairpin. The music happened as well. It was fun. It was great. Radio is just so friendly to every other thing that you can't help but do other things.
I want to step back a longer distance.
I'm going to stop it over there. For you yourself, I mean, just let me just get me subscribing to wrong channel. But anyway, very, 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 very cool. Again, obviously, you can tell I'm a massive fan of Bob Mabena, but yeah, I mean, also for John Perlman. So what a perfect interview again, in terms of execution. You can tell talent, experience, and really just these veterans that are chatting to one another. All right, that is what I would like to stop the lesson with, and I will attach those, like I said, the interview, the full-bodied interview from that exercise, and also those five examples